Basi Legani, אחותי, come to my guardian, my sister, my bride. My father-in-law, he says, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe explains in the maamer that he gave in honor of his passing. In other words, he gave it right before he passed away. And this was the maamer that we learn each year as a remembrance for his last will and testament. The East of a Medrash, Legani, it says in the Medrash, Gani, what does it mean? My guardian, to my pleasure. The place that I was at the very beginning. Essentially, my main essence was there. The main Shekhinah, the main presence of God was there in the Garden of Eden. Before the sin of Adam and Eve, God's main dwelling place was down here in the world, in paradise. In other words, even in this world, the physical world, one can experience paradise. Through the sin of Adam and Eve, known as the sin of the tree of knowledge, and followed by other major sins, because that the Shekhinah, God's divine presence, should go and ascend higher and higher and leave the world until the seventh world, till the seventh heaven. And after that, then 7 great righteous people came. 7 tzaddikim, great leaders, came and brought the Shekhinah, God's divine presence, back down to the world. Each one in his unique fashion. Starting from Avraham and then Yitzchak and Yaakov, etc., until Moshe Rabbeinu. Moses is the 7th. And all the 7th is beloved. This is a general statement. The number 7 in Judaism is a special number and is beloved. The 7th day of the week is Shabbos, is beloved. Same is true. Moshe Rabbeinu was the 7th, is beloved. Our generation is the 7th generation of the Alter Rebbe. We are a generation that is beloved. And Moshe Rabbeinu brought the Shekhinah, brought God back down to the world. And that is the main service and the main intention and the main raison d'etre of our generation, to bring the Shekhinah down to this world. That is the meaning. Tzaddikim will inherit the land. They'll dwell upon it forever. What does that mean? The tzaddikim, they draw down the level of Shekhinah, which means the Shekhinah from heaven. They bring down the one who dwells on high. They bring it down to this world. That God should dwell down here in this world like he dwells in the higher worlds in a revealed manner. How do we do this? What's the secret? What is the major tool, the secret potion, the elixir to bring God down to this world? How do we do this? Through iskafia, by the fact that we curtail our desires. Furthermore, to transform our desires. Through this, we bring God down into all the worlds. The word istalik, even though normally istaluk, says the Rebbe, is from the word istalkos. When a person passes away, they are in istalik, the soul ascends on high. However, in this context, istalik means the opposite. Istalik means to draw down a light that's so powerful, like nuclear energy, that's so overwhelming, to bring it down into this world. We're dealing here with a very strong revelation, and that's why it's called istalik. When you do a mitzvah, but you do it in a way of iskafi v'sapcha. In other words, even though you desire to do something else, but you overcome that desire and you do the mitzvah instead, this brings down a lofty, powerful, magnanimous light into the world. That's the meaning. I will dwell amongst them. Shchanti hainu mishkan. That's the meaning of the commandment. God says, make for me a dwelling place. Also, make for me a holy temple. And I will dwell, says God. This so you come in them. Number one means hainu mishkan umigdash. The first thing literally means God says, make for me a dwelling place, a house, a holy temple, and I will dwell in there. Where did God dwell? He dwelled in the holy temple. That was the main resort, the main location where God's main Shekhinah dwelt. And there's another interpretation. There's another place where God dwells. You know where that is? That's inside of you, every one of you. Each one of us has a heart, and in that heart we have a holy temple. And if we open up the door and we allow God to come into it, God will dwell in your heart. Through the fact that you build this temple, you are creating. You are creating a dwelling place of the Shekhinah. And God will dwell there forever. Besides the fact that in general, every mitzvah that a Yid does, any Jew, the fact that you have the name Jew, your mother was Jewish, and you do a little mitzvah, you light a candle somewhere in Ohio, somewhere in Montreal, somewhere in Punta Cana. You do a little mitzvah, you put a mezuzah on the door in Puerto Rico. You are creating a tremendous revolution throughout the entire world. Now what happens is you cause God's infinite light to dwell in this world. B'mishkan u'b'migdash. In other words, to make this Mishkan, to create this holy temple for God, how did they do it? What was the original prototype? They had in the Mishkan karbanis, they had sacrifices. Pirush karban hu akiruv shbein hamatav ha'mayla. What is the meaning of a sacrifice? That means to get close to God. In other words, the word karban, the word sacrifice in Hebrew, which is called a karbin, literally means kiruv, to get close to God. That you bring God close to mankind, and mankind gets close to God. Which because of Rabbeinu B'chaya b'shem HaZoyar, as Rabbeinu B'chaya says in the name of the Zoyar. So there's two things over here. Number one is literally building the temple, and number two, spiritually building the temple. And really they're intertwined by the fact that we build our spiritual temple within our hearts, and that is by following and becoming a replica of the original holy temple, and that is to bring sacrifices to God. What does sacrifices mean? To get close to God. And also literally sacrifice means iskafia, to give up certain desires for the sake of God. In other words, instead of playing tennis right now, or having a brownie right now, or learning chassidus, this is iskafia. I could have done something else. I could have done something for my personal enhancement, to make more money at this moment. And yet I said, you know what? I'm going to sacrifice this moment. I'm going to curtail my desires. Instead of having a piece of brownie right now, I'm going to learn a maamer chassidus. This is iskafia. This is hapch. And this is getting closer to God. Now, of course, you can have a piece of brownie later, make a bracha on it, and have in mind to use the energy to serve Hashem. That's also a way to serve Hashem. But right now, the way we bring a carbon, right now, the way we bring a sacrifice is by literally sacrificing. Mamshech Ba'Maimer goes on to say in the Maimer, he goes on to say that how do you make a holy temple? By making corruption. You have to make these beams. By making these beams, by making these pillars in the Beis Hamikdash and the Mishkan that was made from acacia wood, standing upright. By making these pillars, that is the way you build the walls of the temple. For the word shitim, the word acacia etymologically also means shtus, which is what? Which is folly. Mishita, Meloshanatiya, what is the meaning of folly? What is the meaning of foolishness? It means Pirush Natiya. to veer to the side, when you don't go down the normal path, but rather you go to the left or to the right of something, that is called folly. Which means to go astray in a perverted path. And that is because of the foolishness and the folly of this world. A person does not commit a sin. Says the Gemara. Unless what happened is that a spirit of folly entered into that person. In other words, a human being by nature is good. A human being by nature is upright. Why then do we do foolish things? Because we think that is good. A spirit of folly entered into us. A spirit of foolishness entered into us and said, oh, this is really what you should be doing. This is good for you. It's good for the universe. Who told you? Nobody told you. You read it somewhere in the newspaper. Your friend decided it's a good thing. Did you ask your Rebbe? Did you ask your teacher? Did you ask your rabbi? Did you ask your mentor? No, you did it on your own. That's the problem. We do things on our own. We need to ask people who are godly, who are scholarly, who are Torah-based people, before we do wild things. It says a person is not sinless, a spirit of folly entered into him. However, there is one redeeming factor here, he says, that folly, craziness, is a good thing if you use it for the Holy Temple. In other words, that is the concept of transformation. We got to transform Woodstock. We got to transform this wildness. We got to transform this craziness that the world right now is in, and transform it to serve Hashem in a crazy way. Holy chutzpah. To serve God in a wild way, beyond logic. Like, oh, someone says, Rabbi, do you have to do this? Do you really have to do this mitzvah? I mean, can't you get away with it? That's the problem. You want to get away with it. The craziness is go over the top, do the mitzvah in the most beautiful way, in the most fancy way. Give you an example. A guy comes over to me, Rabbi, I need to buy a pair of tefillin. Okay, sure, no problem. I'll buy you a pair of tefillin. How much does it cost today? Well, I can get you a pair of tefillin for $750, or I can get you a pair for $2,500. I know I just bought for my child, my mitzvah boy, a year ago, 2 pair of tefillin. By Chabad, we wear 2 pair of tefillin. Each one was about $2,300. The guy tells me, what? Rabbi, so much money. Can't you get me a cheaper set? Can't you get me like one for $150? You know, the fact that a sofer was writing this tefillin for an average of 15, 20 hours. You got to figure a person today, a professional gets, you go to a lawyer, you're paying a lawyer $500 an hour. I have lawyers who take $2,500 an hour. When it comes to these things, you don't ask questions. You go out to a fancy restaurant, you spend $500 in one night, no problem. You get the best wine, you get the best steak. All of a sudden, there's no problem. You put it on your credit card. When it comes to a pair of tefillin, oh my goodness, so expensive. Why is it so much money? Did you ask the restaurateur, why is the steak so expensive? You have to shoot the cows. You have to go to China to bring the cow. The cow is local, it's in New Jersey. Why do you have to spend so much money on a piece of steak? You don't ask those questions. When it comes to a pair of tefillin, all of a sudden, oh, so much money. We got to use this craziness that we're going to spend on a restaurant, this craziness that we're going to spend to buy the best seats for a basketball game, the craziness we're going to spend to buy the best seats in Broadway for the show. That same craziness, that same shtus, that folly, which you don't need to go to Broadway to survive. You don't need to go to the basketball to survive. You can watch it on your iPhone. But you have to be there in the actual stadium. You have to hear the cheers. You have to hear the roar. The same is true. Now take that craziness and apply it to your own life. You got to be in the shul. You got to hear the Kriyas Torah. You got to hear the Amin Yesh Mirabo. You got to take that same craziness and say, I'm going to buy the nicest pair of tefillin. Do I have to? No, I don't have to. But I'm crazy. I'm crazy about God. I'm crazy about Kedusha. I'm crazy about mitzvahs. When you buy your wife's flowers, you buy the cheapest flowers that are dying. You buy a nice pair of flowers. When you buy her a diamond, you buy the cheapest diamond, you buy her something she's going to like. You ask yourself, what is God going to like? I want to buy him a beautiful pair of tefillin. This concept of spiritual folly also applies to the word koroshim. Koroshim are these pillars in the Beis Hamikdash, in the Mishkan. The keresh, the word keresh, who sheker, are the same letters as the word sheker, which means folly, falsehood, fake. The emes, which is the opposite of emes, which is truth. Emes havaya le'olam, God is truth. I know. We need to transform the folly of the world. Make this into a keresh, make this into a pillar for the Mishkan and the Mikdash. Mishkan dikri Mikdash, Mikdash dikri Mishkan. I dezen through this Nasa Mishkan lois barich. By doing so, by building this temple, this inner temple, this spiritual temple, this metaphysical temple, by transforming. How do we do this? Transforming the folly of the world into holy folly, holy chutzpah. By doing this, we are creating the pillars of the temple. By days and nasa mishkan lois barich. By doing so, we make a mishkan. We are making a dwelling place for God Himself. There shall be the dwelling of the Shekhinah. Behold, being that our entire purpose in this world is to transform the folly, which is lower than intellect. Which, in other words, an intellectual person understands that this is dangerous, that this is unholy, this is not safe, that this is something which is crazy. Therefore, we understand the way to fix something is to fix that mistake. So, in other words, if you are using now folly for something negative, which is unholy, the way to fix it is by using now the folly for something which is holy. It's not enough that you say, okay, from now on, I'm going to be good. From now on, I'm going to stop being crazy. From now, I'm going to do the right thing. That's not the way you fix the craziness. The way to fix the craziness is now take that craziness and do something crazy for God. You have to use this craziness for something to serve Hashem, which is above tam v'das, above intellect and understanding. Similar to the Rambam says, the Rambam writes clearly in the laws of Deus, which is the laws of intelligence, the laws of how to behave, the laws of how one is to act. Says the Rambam the following, a beautiful concept, and that is, even though, what is the path that a human being should take, says the Rambam? You should take the central path, not too much to the right, not too much to the left. In other words, don't be radical. Be a Beinani, be in the middle. However, he says that if a person veers one side to the extreme, how does he fix it? Because it's not enough. It's not enough that he should go back to the central path. He must go to the opposite direction in order to get back to the middle. You got to go to the opposite direction. If this is true, but we talk about certain things in this world, we talk about addictions, we're talking about dieting. It's not enough that a person who's now 100 pounds overweight says, okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to start eating now normal. No, eating normal is not going to help you now. You have to start eating in a way that you're going to lose weight. Normal means once you maintain, once you acquire the weight you want, now you eat normal. But by eating normal, you're not going to lose weight. In order to lose that 100 excess pounds, you have to now go to the opposite extreme. And that is the same is true. That is true when we talk about physical things. How much more so, says the Rambam, when we talk about spiritual things. in order to make a dwelling place for God, that is a dafka de avida, shalamayla mitamedas is only through serving Hashem beyond intellect. Lamayla filu mesechol tamdas kedusha, even higher than the intellect of holiness. In other words, going beyond the letter of the law. As the Gemara says, story, the tractate of Ksubis, that there was a rabbi and he would dance before the kala, and he would throw up the myrtles, and he would put the kala on his shoulders and dance with her. When he passed away, the Talmud says that there was a beam of light that went from heaven down to earth. And when the other rabbi said, how come he is so special that there's a beam of light that is going onto his cave, onto his tomb, and no other rabbis have this beam of light, they said it was because of Shtusei Del Saba, because he acted foolish, because he acted crazy, in a crazy way beyond holiness, beyond intellect. It was this shtus, this folly, this craziness beyond intellect that brought about this reward of God. And therefore, any Jew that's able to act crazy for God is called Tzivayis Hashem. You are in God's army. You are a tzahal. You are a soldier. You are fighting in the war. You are the IDF. What does it mean to be a soldier? An army. A soldier is willing to give up his life for Hashem. As the Rebbe said many times, that every single soldier in Israel is holy. These are people who are literally giving up their lives for other Jews. There are people who talk about it. There are people who think about it. And there are people who actually do it. These people are on the highest level. Every one of these soldiers are on the highest level because they are literally laying down their lives for Am Yisrael, protecting God's people. And this is really an avodah shelamayla matan v'das. Willing to die is something which is illogical, because logically the body has a defense mechanism that protects itself from death. And if you are willing to die, it means you are going against logic. And this is a holy craziness. This is a holy chutzpah. In order to win a war, you have to be willing to die. And just like you have to be willing to die, the only way a person can truly live, and anything worth living for is really worth dying for. If it's not worth dying for, it's not worth living for. So when it comes to serving Hashem, we have to have this craziness that we say, God, we're willing to die for you. Because in truth, if you're not willing to die, it's impossible to win the war. And therefore people go to war and they're willing to give up their lives. So many soldiers have already passed away, had died already in this war of Gaza. However, this is really the task of every Jew. That is why we are called the army of God. Even a person who is very low spiritually, ignorant and debased, when it comes to life and death, to serve Hashem, he's willing to give up his life. So all of this, by the way, is the introduction to this year's chapter of this year's Maimer. He goes on to explain, in order to win the war, the king is willing to open up the treasures, which is given above. And I define by a king that has a treasure. Even the treasures that have been closed and he has not touched until then. Furthermore, the treasures of his forefathers, which are very precious to him, So precious and so priceless are they that he does not show them to anyone. However, in order for the king to win the war, he places his life on the line. What does the king do? He opens up and he gives out all of these hidden treasures. And the treasures that his fathers and his grandfathers hid away. By days, I'm giving these treasures to the soldiers and giving them this consolation prize. This inspires them to fight stronger. And through this, he wins the war. And practically, what does this mean? To win a war, you have to have the attribute of netzach, the attribute of victory. In other words, you have to really want to win. This has to really take you existentially to the very core of your soul. You have to really want it. You have to really say, I'm going to win this. I'm going to make it happen. Now, okay, I'll show up once a year to the synagogue and I'll give a pledge and I'll have a little chayim and a piece of herring. No. You have to live with it every minute. That is why, naturally, the older person gets more and more, he wants to be victorious. This is similar to the statement. That a true Torah scholar who does not take revenge and does not pursue like a snake is not a true Torah scholar. In other words, if you truly love Torah and you truly want to understand it, you have to work hard on it. This represents a very high level pertaining to victory. However, you know that a Jew cannot, God forbid, take revenge. So what does it really mean? That a scholar, Torah scholar, has to be on a level of taking revenge. This is for another occasion. And simply pertaining to a king. On one hand, the king is supposed to be aloof and above the people, including also the generals of the army and the ministers. Yet, the king, in his heart of hearts, the most important thing to the king is victory. And because of the victory, to shoot him, therefore, because the king, his entire essence relies upon victory, being king, he's willing to give up all of his treasures, even the most sacred and the most priceless, that have been hidden for generations and not seen by any human eye. The king now opens up all of these treasures and gives it out to the soldiers. This we're going to stop today. And just to finalize the last piece here, and that is, says the Rebbe the following, that the king opens up these hidden treasures and he gives it out to the soldiers. Now, it's true that he gives it out through the generals. However, it's not for the generals. It is primarily for the foot soldiers, because they are the ones that actually bring about the victory. And anyone who today is following the war on Gaza sees that you have the prime ministers and you have generals and you have all of these big knackers who are running the army. But ultimately, who are the ones who are bringing about the victory? These are the soldiers on the ground. These are the foot soldiers. These are the ones that the king wants, that these people should receive all of the treasures. Yes, he disperses it through the generals. He disperses it through the great majors and the captains of the army. But ultimately, the objective is it should get down to the foot soldiers. What is the lesson of all of us? The lesson to all of us, my dear friends, is as follows. Most of us are not Moshe Rabbeinu, and most of us are not Aaron HaKohen, and most of us are not Miriam or Sarah, Rivka, Rachav, Leah. Most of us are the foot soldiers. And we think sometimes to ourselves, why do we matter? Why are we important? Are we truly significant? Comes along the Rebbe here in the Maimon, and he says, you should know that everything that God did in the world and all of creation is just that we, the foot soldiers, should be the one fulfilling the mission. We are the ones that are going to build the temple. We are the ones that are going to bring Mashiach. Yes, you need a Rebbe, you need Moshe Rabbeinu, you need Aaron HaKohen, you need Sarah, Rivka, Rachav, Leah. You need all the great matriarchs and patriarchs. But they are there as guides. They are there as mentors. They are there as strategists. They are the ones that are giving us the advice how to do it. But we need to do it. It's up to us. Every single one of us. Nobody is too small and nobody's insignificant. And no mitzvah is too light and too simple. Everything we do has a major nuclear impact. It has an impact on the entire world. We are we are now at the last few seconds of Golus. Mashiach is about to reveal himself. We need to do the final mitzvahs, the final blows. Don't give up. Hold on. Keep on doing it. Keep persisting. Keep pushing. Keep forcing it. Make it happen. And finally, we're going to see the last mitzvah, the final blow that will bring about the ultimate Geulah. We see this in Israel, Baruch Hashem, day by day. There's victory there. And in our daily lives, we have victory day by day. We got to continue to move on. Don't give up. We got to finish the war. There's no ceasefire here. There's no ceasefire, my friends. We're finishing the war. It's a war of good over evil. It's a war of the godly soul over the animal soul. We got to finish the war. We got to make it happen. Each one of us is a soldier. God calls Am Yisrael, Tzivos Hashem, the army of God.